Just a few hours away, President Trump is going to go out to Joint Base Andrews and hit the road to push tax reforms.
People want to see tax cuts, and that's what we're doing.
We went to 4% with Reagan's tax cuts. These tax cuts, as written, are as powerful.
The commissioner of the NFL is getting on board with the president, saying he agrees that all of the players need to stand up.
It's all about honoring the flag and the many men and women that died for our country.
At least 17 people are dead, 200 missing as wildfires burn out of control in California.
My neighbors, their houses are gone.
President Trump could be heading to South Korea.
Sends a message to the 30,000 troops that their commander-in-chief is leading. He's leading from the front.
For the first time in nearly 30 years, the U.S. men's soccer team will not take the field for next year's World Cup.
Reality setting in like a sledgehammer on the U.S. bench.
Beautiful Wednesday.
It is indeed. Thank you very much for joining us and making us the world's #1 cable morning news show. Thanks to folks like you.
And thanks to Florida Georgia Line for staying together.
And thanks to Brian for
They
making
sang
them
that
famous.
song on this program the first time ever.
Right.
We know Brian claims that he made them famous.
Right.
Oh, really?
I said stick with Cruz and stay together.
That's a good story.
Yeah.
Let me add that to your Wikipedia. Will somebody put that in his Wikipedia right now?
Yeah.
Do not look at my Wikipedia.
He pretty much made Florida Georgia Line.
It's not all accurate. We know that.
Well, it's not at all accurate. It scares children, my Wikipedia page. It's unbelievable.
Oh, I got to look it up.
Yeah, it's really bad.
All right.
All right, let me
Later,
just tell you.
after the show.
Yeah, really. In just a few hours, President Trump will hit the road to push for his new tax reform plan. He'll be in Pennsylvania.
So
Cue the girl.
Sorry. So what should we expect? Joining us now from Washington, D.C. with all the brand new details is Griff Jenkins. I'm sorry. I was off in space thinking about Brian's Wikipedia.
Don't look.
Well, look, guys, let me tell you where the president is going to cruise, perhaps with the windows down. He's going to familiar ground, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, where he's making his third trip since taking office. He's going to be speaking there at the Air National Guard hangar, and a lot of that audience is going to be made up of truck drivers, a group the president considers the lifeblood of the economy. In fact, here's an excerpt from his speech that the White House has just released. It speaks to truckers. He says, quote, "When your trucks are moving, America is growing. That is why my administration is taking historic steps to remove the barriers that slow you down. America first means putting American truckers first." And the president, as you may have noticed, is up and tweeting this morning about the stock market increasing by more than 25% since last November, unemployment down, and urging Congress to get behind his tax plan. He's tweeting, quote, "If Congress gives us the massive tax cuts and reform I am asking for, those numbers will grow by leaps and bounds. Make America great again." He's also attacking Democrats on Twitter, saying, quote, "The Democrats want massive tax increases and soft crime-producing borders. The Republicans want the biggest tax cut in history and the wall." So quite an active morning before the president heads to Pennsylvania. But on that Twitter feed, we'll be watching to see if there's anything new about Tennessee Senator Bob Corker. Of course, he's been feuding with them. And Corker could be a very important vote when the Senate votes on tax reform, guys.
Right.
Exactly right.
Senator Joni Ernst said, "Can we both please stop the president and Senator Corker? She's calling for a ceasefire."
All right.
Yeah.
Griff, thank you very much. Meanwhile, it's hard to believe it was only 18 days ago, but that is when the President of the United States was down in Alabama. He was stumping for Luther Strange, who was running for that open Senate seat. And he said essentially that National Football League team owners should fire players who kneel. And that spawned a debate all across the country. And it looks as if on this Wednesday morning, the president actually made a touchdown. It looks like the president did win this particular phase of it because the commissioner apparently has sent a letter out to the team owners, and it was apparently leaked or intercepted by a reporter, that said everybody should stand for the national anthem in the NFL.
Here's the letter. Here's what a portion of what it says. Like many of our fans, we believe that everyone should stand for the national anthem. It is an important moment in our game. We want to honor our flag and our country, and our fans expect that of us. He also said in the September committee meetings that he did hear from a lot of the players, listen to their underlining issues, why they're so important to them, and he's going to support their work, and they're going to continue that dialogue.
Again, he's urging. There's a union. It doesn't mean I can't see Seattle getting everyone standing. 23 49ers took a knee. Are they going to stand up this weekend? That's just the commissioner speaking right now, and you would think they'd listen, but they're not under any obligation to listen. Meanwhile, this is the president tweeting moments ago. Let's read it together. It's about time that Roger Goodell of the NFL is finally demanding that all players stand for the great national anthem, respect our country.
Sure.
I just see now there's going to be pushback from the players. Martellus Bennett came out, and he's in disbelief as he tweets. He's a tight end with the Packers, and I don't think him or his brother are going to stand.
How are they going to enforce it, though?
Good question. Keep in mind, Roger Goodell works for the owners. So obviously the owners are in a pickle. They got billions of dollars on the line. So what they're saying essentially is, and there's Roger Goodell, the guy who is the commissioner for the NFL, essentially is saying, okay, we want everybody who's out on that field to be standing. Maybe they do what a team did this past weekend. If you're not going to stand, don't go out. Obviously, after the president said this regarding the owners should fire people who kneel, it was a big, big story all over the place. So with the news now that apparently the president scored a victory on this, how did the mainstream media cover it? Well, lightly. ABC spent 16 seconds covering the fact that, yeah, I know, that Roger Goodell said everybody should stand. CBS spent 22 seconds. NBC, look at that, almost 2 minutes.
Wow. Meanwhile, the other subplot is what's going on at ESPN. It turns out that Al Sharpton's demanding that that female anchor get her job back and not have her 2-week suspension. And then you have Bob Iger, who might be running for president. He's getting pressure to put the ESPN anchor Jemele Hill back on the air right now, and he's kind of worried about his own prospects of how it's going to look for the African-American vote, perhaps, what he's going to do.
Well, in her mind, she might think it makes her look better, because she does have, there are a lot of people that do support her view. Plus, she's probably still getting paid, and she's getting to take a 2-week vacation.
Al Sharpton did yesterday threaten to boycott ESPN for suspending her. I think the quotation off of Twitter is, ESPN and advertisers will hear from us. Speaking of the media, Rush Limbaugh had this to say regarding the fake news, because, you know, there's stories out there. John Kelly's about to get fired as chief of staff. All these different things seem to be driving the narrative in the mainstream about this president and this administration. But Rush had a potent observation yesterday regarding the media in this country. Listen to this.
With Donald Trump as president, the drive-by media cannot drive-by stories as they please any longer. Remember what the definition of the drive-by media is. They arrive on the scene of some event and they blow it up, and then they leave. And everybody else has to pick up the mess. With Donald Trump as president, the media is not allowed to behave as they normally behave. Every issue the drive-bys want to blow up, Donald Trump stays on that issue and counters them and fights against them and does not let them automatically create and drive the narrative. Donald Trump serves as a roadblock, if you will, to the drive-by media.
What do you think about that? Email us, friends@foxnews.com.
Meanwhile, the president, some sources are saying the White House has sent a team over to the Korean Peninsula, to the DMZ line where this separates North Korea from South Korea, over there to kind of scope out the area, because there's talk that the president might be going there over the next month to go and maybe work on a deal with North Korea. We have a lot of troops in South Korea right now, so he's possibly going to go over there, and, you know, everyone's worried about North Korea and what's going to happen.
He's going to China. He's going to talk to them predominantly about North Korea and work out some type of trade deal. Then he's going to go to South Korea, and they'd have an advance team saying, why not have a show of force there as he walks the DMZ line. At the same time, last night he sent 2 strategic bombers over the Korean Peninsula. He also had some ships go right by those Chinese manufactured islands that we were told not to go by. We're doing it anyway through the region, so he's definitely showing some strength. Michael Waltz, former Green Beret guy, was on last night. He said, what does this mean for the peninsula? Listen.
It sends a message to the 30,000 troops that we have in South Korea whose lives are sitting over there on the line, the 25,000 soldiers, sailors, and airmen and women that we have in Japan, and not to mention the ones that we have in Guam that their commander-in-chief is leading. He's leading from the front, and that he's no longer going to accept the same old that we've had for the last 30 years as the North Korean regime has strung us along and is now on the brink of having an ICBM that can strike the United States.
Meanwhile, the New York Times reporting today that South Korea got hacked and they were able to find out information about a would-be plot to take out Kim Jong-un.
So can you imagine when the president starts his Asian visit on November 2nd, if he, during his visit to South Korea, actually went to the DMZ where you are right there on the line with North Korea? That would send such a message.
I think about that interview with Otto Warmbier's parents and what Kim Jong-un and his regime did to this kid, ripping out his teeth one at a time and putting it back in there. He came over back to America where he died a few days after seeing his parents. He wasn't with it, they said. He was blind, he was deaf, he was in a coma, beyond a coma, his mom said.
They have a few more of our guys right now, and that's what they rumored the back channel that Tillerson evidently was dealing with, was to try to get those people out.
So anyway, the president may go to the DMZ between North and South Korea, according to one reliable news source. Meanwhile, it's 7-11 here in New York City right now. Still ahead, a tale of two timelines regarding the Las Vegas shooting just emerging.
And illegal immigration becoming a hot topic in Virginia's governor's race. The president endorsing Ed Gillespie on the issue. He joins us live next.
I have made it clear that I support local law enforcement. I don't support sanctuary cities. We don't have sanctuary cities in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
So you signed the bill in that end, but you refused to say that in the event that one were established, you would ban them. Being anti-MS-13 is not being anti-immigrant. It is important. We want these people gone. It's our communities that are most vulnerable. We cannot allow for the establishment of sanctuary cities.
Wow, Virginia race for governor putting illegal immigration in the spotlight. The closely watched swing state contest, a possible referendum on President Trump's first year in office. Joining us right now is GOP nominee for governor, who almost was a senator, Ed Gillespie, who was National Security Advisor to President Bush and former RNC chair. Big resume. Why do you want to be governor, Ed? This is going to be anything but easy.
Well, I love Virginia, Brian, and we're in trouble here. The fact is we've had 6 straight years where our economic growth rate has been below the national GDP rate. We used to always lead it, and now we're lagging it. Growth last year in Virginia was 0.6%, and we were 39th out of 50 states. And in wage growth, we were 44th out of 50 states. And I know Virginia can be #1 in the country in job creation and wage growth with the right policies, but we don't have those policies right now. We're not going to unless I get elected governor.
For the longest time, if you are against illegal immigration, you would put in a category of being anti-Hispanic. How have you separated yourself from the normal mantra?
Well, I'm the son of an immigrant, and I know that people who come here contribute to our economy and to our country and become patriotic Americans. And we're a welcoming Commonwealth here. But the fact is, when someone commits a violent crime, murder or other violent crime, and they're here illegally, we need to cooperate with federal authorities and comply with the federal immigration laws, and those people need to be deported. And I heard the clip that you ran in quoting an Hispanic faith leader in Northern Virginia, where MS-13 has committed, in what's been publicly reported, 8 murders since November in Northern Virginia alone. And he was the one who was saying, you know, it's our communities that are attacked by MS-13. We want them gone. And I was quoting him, and the point I made to my opponent, the lieutenant governor, who voted against a ban on sanctuary cities, and in the debate would not say that he would ban them even if they were established here in the Commonwealth. I want to prevent them from ever being established. He says, well, we don't have any. But he made clear on the other night that he won't ban them even if they are. Wouldn't say that he would do that. And I was quoting this gentleman, and he was saying these are in our communities. And I said to him, you know, Ralph, it's not young women from your neighborhood or mine who are being forced into human trafficking by MS-13. We have got to step up and make Virginia safer, and I will.
Right. MS-13, for the most part, they come over as unaccompanied minors. They get put with a sponsor family, and then for the most part, a lot of times, that family has loose reins, and they go to work, terrorizing high schools or terrorizing the community. That's what we witnessed on Long Island. It looks like you have the same problem in Virginia. President Trump just tweeted this out on October 5th, so last week. He said, Ralph Northam, your opponent, who is running for governor of Virginia, is fighting for the violent MS-13 killer gangs in sanctuary cities. Vote as Gillespie. That's really what you want to do it, because guess what communities get hurt the most? Working class Hispanic communities get terrorized first and foremost by these MS-13 illegals.
Well, and that was the point I was making about this Hispanic faith leader in Northern Virginia who has a big community. And he was saying, look, you know, these MS-13 gang members, they don't represent at all what, Hispanic values are. And I know that to be true. I have a lot of support in the Hispanic, amongst Virginians of Hispanic descent. And there's no doubt about that. And this is a very important issue, because if you're not able to cooperate with federal authorities, you allow for sanctuary cities to be established. And we've seen states where that's been done and it has not made their people safer. Right. I believe leadership is not just responding and reacting to problems, it's getting ahead of them and preventing them. And that's why I would support a law here in Virginia that says that no city or county shall be able to defy federal authorities when it comes to complying with immigration laws. My opponent voted against a bill like that, and he says, well, it's because we don't have any of those. But then when I asked him in the debate, what if a couple of cities became sanctuary cities? In that instance, would you retroactively ban them? And even then he wouldn't say that he would. Right. And so it's clear he's just against a ban on sanctuary cities and is favor of allowing them in the Commonwealth of Virginia. That's consistent with the vote he cast on the floor of our state Senate.
Ed Gillespie, who was almost the next senator from Virginia, they need extra weeks in a recount to decide that he actually did not have enough votes. This time he wants to make sure. Ed Gillespie, best of luck to be the next governor of Virginia. It looks like it's going to be a tight race.
It's going to be close. We're going to win it. And I feel it everywhere I go. Thank you, Brian.
All right, coming up straight, the war on cops moving from street to street to the Supreme Court now. The ruling that could allow accused criminals to sue cops personally. Really?
Good Wednesday morning to you. Back with some headlines now. TMZ reporting Harvey Weinstein boarded a private jet overnight, headed to a sex rehab center in Europe. Meantime, his friend Hillary Clinton finally breaking her silence, releasing a short statement saying, quote, I was shocked and appalled by the revelations about Harvey Weinstein. The behavior described by women coming forward cannot be tolerated. No mention what she will do about his past campaign donations. Meanwhile, his wife announcing she is leaving him hours after a bombshell report detailed accusations from 3 women who say he raped them. And MGM Resorts, which owns the Mandalay Bay Hotel, says the sheriff's report that the gunman shot a hotel security guard before opening fire in Las Vegas may not be true. The company only saying, quote, what is currently being expressed may not be accurate. And finally, hundreds of people paying their respects at a vigil for a Texas Tech police officer shot and killed by a student. Investigators say Hollis Daniels admits to shooting Officer Floyd East Jr. in the head. It happened at the campus police station after Hollis was arrested for drugs. Officer East leaves behind a wife and 2 little girls. Ainsley.
Thank you, Jillian. The war on cops moving from the streets to the Supreme Court now. The High Court is debating a case that will decide how and if officers should be shielded from liability. The case stems from a 2008 incident where multiple partygoers were cleared of trespassing, and then they later sued D.C. police officers who were held liable for nearly $1 million in damages and legal fees. And there is worry that the ruling could make officers hesitate now to enforce the law. Here to explain this is Peter Kirsanow. He is an attorney for the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights. Peter, thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Ainsley.
Good morning. So this all stems back to these cops arrest, more than 20 kids that are partying, or teenagers or 20-year-olds partying, and they arrest them. They drop the charges, but they took them to the police station and questioned them. 16 of them sued D.C., saying that they were arrested. For trespassing charges. They were not trespassing. They were called by this girl named Peaches to come into the house and party with them. So now the Supreme Court is arguing whether or not cops should be held liable. What do you think?
Well, this has to do with the implications for the doctrine of qualified immunity, which doctrine, without getting a whole lot of details, says that public officials, including cops, may not be held personally liable for the performance of their official duties, provided they don't violate a clearly established law. In this particular case, the two lower courts said that the police officers did not have reasonable cause to charge these individuals with trespass because the partygoers didn't know that they were trespassing, and the cops very reasonably argued that they had a reasonable belief that they were trespassing, and to hold cops to a standard of determining with some degree of certitude that somebody knows something prior to an arrest would be nearly impossible in the context of an ongoing arrest, and that could expose cops to significant liability, as it did in this particular case, $1 million worth of liability. It would chill the ability of cops, or cause them to be reluctant to enforce the law, even minor crimes, relatively minor crimes, which then would cascade into violent crimes. And the effect here could be something significant and profound, because we saw a similar dynamic play under the Ferguson effect, which is a term that was coined by Heather McDonald of the Manhattan Institute to describe the spike in violent crime that occurred immediately after the Ferguson incident, the Michael Brown shooting, where cops were starting to withdraw from active and proactive policing because they were vulnerable to prosecution. They were subject to Obama Justice Department, DOJ consent decrees, and even the city administrators were telling them to draw back or change their police practices. And despite a 2-decade substantial decline in the crime rate, from 79.6 incidents per 1,000 individuals to 18.6, and a drop of 30% in the homicide rate, extraordinary. Right after Ferguson, there was a significant spike in violent crime. Homicides went up 30%. The number of blacks killed in any given year rose in each subsequent year by 900. And so when you have this kind of withdrawal from policing, which this could augur, I doubt it's going to happen in this case, but the case is being decided by the Supreme Court. If you've got a restriction of qualified immunity, cops are going to be reluctant to engage in proactive policing. Cops are being scared to do their jobs. Are we seeing a decline? You said a spike in crime rate. What about a decline in the number of people that are signing up to be officers now? Well, what we've seen is the city of Baltimore, which was the subject of, as you know, riots, protests, and the mayor famously said they wanted to give space for, they wanted the cops to withdraw to give space for those who wish to destroy, to go ahead and destroy. When you have changes in police practices like that, the city of Baltimore is having a significant problem recruiting police officers. They had an expansion of overtime because they couldn't get enough police officers to staff regular shifts. This has implications down the road on the street in the real world. And again, it doesn't have to be violent crimes that are being interdicted. It's the broken windows kind of public order policing that starts to diminish. And then there's a cascade effect to violent crime. Yeah, Peter, when we were at the convention in Philadelphia, I talked to one officer and he said, I take my uniform off before I go home because I don't want anyone to see me in the uniform, because he was fearful of his safety. Thank you for joining us. Peter, Kirstenow, we appreciate it. What does compromise look like to Nancy Pelosi? Republicans voting for the Democrats' agenda. Guess she didn't get the memo because they lost. Former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, joins us live on the couch for that and much more coming up next.
All right, we're back with the Fox News Alert. It could be one of the worst natural disasters in California history.
At this hour, massive wildfires continue to burn in wine country, leaving 17 people dead and at least 200 are missing.
It is just a terrible story. And joining us right now from Suisun Valley, Adam Housley, who grew up in that part of California. Adam, tell us the latest.
Yeah, Steve, this morning we've been told now more than 2,000 structures have been destroyed by these fires that are continuing to burn in the wine country. Right now, the winds died down right before sunup, so the fire's really laid down here. But as soon as that sun comes up, the wind's expected to pick up and things are expected to get going again. So kind of giving firefighters a bit of a break right now. As for those missing person numbers, Sonoma County alone, which is just to our west, we're told there are about 254 missing person reports that have been filed. That doesn't mean they're all people in hospitals or dead, unfortunately, but they're people that can't be found. Remember, Communications are down. The sheriff came on early this morning here and said that they've cleared about 50 of those, meaning they found 50 or so people so far. So that bring that number back down towards 200. But the communications, he says, are very difficult because cell phone is down. There's a lot of power out still in many of these areas. Right now, where we're located, Sassoon, is just over the ridge from Napa. This fire is now 25,000 acres. It burned through here pretty good last night. The wind kicked up, and at one point it jumped 3/4 of a mile. And guys, I give it back to you. Here's a weird instance. So my parents and friends on the west side of Napa, the east side of Napa, where the Silverado Trail is, a couple of days ago, evacuated to the west side of the valley, about 2 miles away. I'll get it out right. So they went 2 miles away to the west. Now the people on the west side, there's a fire over there, have to evacuate to the east side. Back to you guys.
It is just a mess. All right, Adam joins us from California, where some are still out of control.
Yeah. Meanwhile, let's bring in Newt Gingrich, former Speaker of the House and the 2012 GOP candidate. It seems like 10 years ago. Fox News contributor and author of a brand new book called Vengeance, and he has a gift first and foremost for Ainsley.
And this is Ellis the elephant.
I love Ellis.
Calista wanted me to bring it to you.
You are so sweet. Calista has a new book coming out too, but she's not allowed to come on TV because she is the ambassador, or soon-to-be ambassador.
So she cannot.
To the Vatican.
So I'm allowed to come and say, "Remember the Ladies" is her book about presidents' wives.
Right, and we're going to talk about your book in a segment, but first let's talk about this. It looks as if Donald Trump won the debate over whether or not the players should stand during the national anthem, because yesterday the commissioner, Roger Goodell, pictured right there, put out a message. It was a leaked internal league memo. It said, like many of our fans, we believe that everyone should stand for the national anthem. It is an important moment in our game. We want to honor our flag and our country, and our fans expect that of us. What do you make of that?
Well, it only took Roger, 2 or 3 weeks of public humiliation to finally get the message. Trump has this unique ability to understand where the American people are and what the American people value. And of course, the Washington elites don't get any of that. And so they're sitting there going, boy, this is really stupid. Meanwhile, by 65%, the American people are going to him. And if you saw the collapse, it was Dave Winston did a poll where the NFL is now the least respected of the major sports. 2 years ago, it would have been the most respected.
As the owners, most of them seem to be supportive of the GOP, and most of them, a lot of them are self-made multimillionaires that tend to profile that.
I think they were a little bit frightened of their players, frankly, and didn't want to get into a fight, wanted it to all go away, and Trump wouldn't let it go away. He said, no, let's have a fight over this. And the result was, when the country paid attention, the country said, well, of course you ought to respect the flag. And I think the most devastating single thing I saw, I think it was on Twitter, was a veteran who had lost one leg, who said, this is what taking a knee for your country means.
Right.
And you looked at that and you thought, and he said, stand up for the flag. I mean, it was just devastating.
And the guy that started the whole thing is not even in the league anymore. So the guys took the lead from somebody who seemed to have skidded into the cause.
Let's talk about immigration reform. There's so much going on the Hill right now with immigration tax reform, Obamacare repeal and replace. But Nancy Pelosi said, a few weeks ago she had dinner at the White House, Nancy and Chuck. And the poll showed that America really liked that. They liked the fact that they were compromising. But now she's saying to his 70, 90-point plan, however many points it is, she's saying, we don't like it. Our idea of compromising is doing what we want. Here's the quote from, there's nothing in it to negotiate because it does not have shared values of who we are as Americans. Right now, we're trying to get Republicans to vote on what we believe.
I know, Nancy, I saw this interesting article the other day about the average age of the Democratic leadership now. Nancy's caught in a time warp. I mean, she now represents a world that's disappeared. And I do think the country, by the way, would like to see compromise. I do think the country values the idea of getting together, of politicians putting the country above partisanship. But that has to require listening to each other and finding some common ground.
So what, are you saying she's too old? Is it fair to go after someone's age?
No, I don't think it's her age. I think it's her head. I think that she's trapped in a world of San Francisco 25 years ago, and her attitude is, why aren't you for everything I believe in? Isn't it so obvious to you that I'm right?
So you're giving advice to the Democrats, you need new ideas.
Including Nancy. I mean, if she wants to stay as leader, she ought to try to enter the 21st century, think about how the... But we had the same experience yesterday on Korea when Jimmy Carter stood up and said, hi, I'm the guy who launched this in 1994. It's been a total failure for 23 years, and I'm available.
Yeah, I'd like to take the lead again to go over there. Fantastic.
Let's sign him up.
So let's talk about another major issue that's facing the president. By the 15th, he's got to decide if he's going to decertify the Iranian deal and send it back to Congress to vote on whether sanctions should be reinstated. And a report came out today from a group called the NCRI that says there's a new military location for what they say is a nuclear weapon plant. This is the National Council of Resistance of Iran group, and it's an outgrowth of the MEK.
Yes.
Do you think this is going to play a role? Is this a group you respect and know anything about?
Well, it's a group, first of all, it's a group that I have worked with in the past. Back when I was Speaker, they had been very falsely accused of being a terrorist group by the Iranian government. And our State Department and its bureaucratic wisdom had decided to listen to the Iranian government under Clinton. The fact is that they have been the best source of information inside Iran. They have huge personal networks, extended families. So they're probably right. I don't see how the president, given what he said at the UN and given what he has said publicly, how does he now certify what he said is the worst deal we ever made?
Right. Well, he can't. And so then he kicks it back to the U.S. Senate.
Right.
And, of course, Bob Corker is there, and he's one of the guys who said, okay, let's, Mr. President, to the last president, let's go ahead. We're going to sign on board here. What's interesting about this, though, going forward, is there are a lot of powerful Democrats who do not like the Iranian deal.
Well, and Corker didn't like it either, but he was dealing with Obama. And I think if Corker and Cardin wrote in a provision which is allowing the president to suspend it, and the provision is very broad. It says, you know, not just the nuclear stuff, but if in your judgment it's not in the national security interest of the United States.
So Bob Corker gave Donald Trump the out.
Corker gave Trump the out. And I think Trump will take the out, and I think he should. I mean, we need a strategy for taking on
Do you think
Iran.
Should Congress reimpose sanctions? They have 60 days to decide.
I think they should, and I think they should actually make them tougher.
Yeah, but the problem is it's just us. The rest of the world, in Russia and China, are now doing business.
Notice what
and
we're
so
doing,
is Europe.
But notice what we're doing in North Korea. We're saying, you know, if your bank deals with them, it will not deal with any U.S. bank. We're still the biggest economy in the world. We're still the center of the world financial system.
Plus, China is squeezing North Korea like it's never squeezed them before.
That's right.
Supposedly. That's what they say. Real quick.
That's what they say.
Senator Bob Corker came out and said, and passed a referendum that said you can pass this treaty without the majority of Senate votes. There was only 40+ votes for this treaty. Could you tell me legislatively what this deal is, why it was passed, how he was in cahoots with President Obama to do this?
No, I don't think he was in cahoots. I think he was faced with the reality that if he had passed the bill he liked, Obama would veto it. And he wanted a bill signed, and he specifically wanted the provision that Trump's about to use, which allows the president to pull out of it.
But why would you ever have a provision in that allows less than 50 senators, and you're in the majority, less than 50 senators to okay a plan? Why would you do that?
Because it was the price of getting Obama to sign it.
That's how it works in Washington.
Just reject
the price of stuff.
Why not
just if they rejected it, then they would not currently have an ability to withdraw from it.
But then they wouldn't have Senate approval on it.
Right, but it would still be there because you had Kerry and Obama.
And now it is the president.
Who, by the way, cared more about the Iranians than about the Congress.
Sure. Right.
Thank you for Ellis. Thank you. Congratulations to Callista. She's moving to Italy.
Right. And she's sticking around.
We're going to talk about her book and his book called Vengeance on the other side of a quick timeout. Also, Twitter changing course after censoring a Republican lawmaker by the name of Marsha Blackburn for being pro-life. The congressman is going to join us live to react. Coming up.
Plus, NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell is suddenly feeling patriotic, telling players to stand for the anthem. But one former cop says it's too late. He joins us live.
Roger Goodell don't care about the flag. He don't care about American people. He don't care about these athletes. He don't care about their cause. He don't care about none of that.
Newt Gingrich, who writes many, many books and is just coming off of a top New York Times bestseller, has got a brand new one. It's called Vengeance. It drops today, and it's interesting because when in the description, it talks a little bit about how a terrorist is behind the wheel of a rental truck, and he's plowing into somebody's wedding.
Right. I think the book starts about as fast as you could possibly start. The opening line is something like, "Death was coming to Washington," but there are two really important lessons in Vengeance, which is a very fast-moving adventure story, in which Brooke Grant, who is
it is fiction.
It is fiction, and she's our Marine major who has played a role now in 3 novels, but. There are two key parts. One is we suggest that the terrorists could get 2 super tankers full of oil and swap them to the North Koreans for nuclear. And there's a lesson here for people to think about. It's not just, stopping missiles. Once you have certain kinds of weapons, there are lots of ways to deliver them, and you got to think about lots of different ways to get threatened. The second is something where I think we really have to restructure our national security system, which is really put right in the middle of Vengeance, which is you can't think in terms of verticals. You can't think U.S. Iran, U.S. ISIS, U.S. Korea. You got to think about how do these people network. The Iranians, for example, have at least 19 missiles they bought for the North Koreans. The North Koreans were building a nuclear reactor in Syria until the Israelis bombed it. I mean, there are networks of relationships of people who hate us and who empower each other. And that's a big part of what Vengeance is all about, is trying to take the daily news and make sense out of it in a deeper way, but do so as a very, very entertaining novel. Friends of mine who read the pre-publication copy said it was like, they couldn't go to bed and they just stayed up and tried to figure out what's coming next.
That's great.
Also, Callista and her elephant, Ellis. They have a new book.
Ellis and Callista co-authored Remember the Ladies.
I like the title.
It's actually a letter from Abigail Adams to her husband where she says, when you're writing the Constitution, remember the ladies. It's about the president's wives, and I think the pictures in it are fabulous, and it's really aimed right at 4 to 8 year olds, and I think that Callista's commitment is to help young Americans learn about American history, since so many schools won't teach it anymore. And I think that this is volume 7 in which Ellis keeps teaching people about America.
I'm sure she's watching. Congratulations, Callista.
Congratulations, yes.
She can't be here because she's under consideration.
She's allowed to watch television, she's not be on television. She's allowed to watch television.
Malling says, if I'm here with Ellis the elephant and her book, she had better be watching.
Yeah.
But she watches you guys. I mean, she gets up with you guys every day.
Right. And
she is part of the Friends in the Morning
Absolutely.
routine.
She's moving to Rome?
She's moving to Rome, and I'll be there 2/3 of the time and here 1/3.
All right. Well, Newt, thank you very much for joining us live.
Congratulations to both of you.
At least we'll have a place to stay when we go to Italy. Right?
Yeah, let's plan a trip. Coming up next, NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell is suddenly feeling patriotic, telling players to stand for the national anthem. But one former cop has a message for the league.
Roger Goodell and the NFL is full of crap.
And he's not done. He's going to join us live next.
Right, I saw his lips moving after you killed the audio. Plus, beat down in aisle 4. This guy picked the wrong place to rob.
But first, in this day in 1961, Ray Charles was topping the charts with this classic, Hit the Road, Jack.